God sometimes brings us face to face with the impossible to show us that when our power runs out, His is just getting warmed up. We'll hear about a man who almost lost his life learning that lesson as Dr. Evans takes us to the book of 2 Kings. Let's join him.
There are some, even here, who are facing things that look like they will never change. All hope is gone to ever see the consequences of that sin reversed. Living for days, months, years, and decades with the pain of the past. If you could do it all over again, you would definitely do it differently. How many of you like puzzles? Anybody like putting together puzzles? Well, today we're going to have a puzzle. Let's summarize our situation. Gehazi is Elijah's servant. Elijah has just instructed Naaman how to be healed 7 times in the Jordan. Naaman dips down 7 times, comes up totally healed, and then turns and offers Elijah money, clothes, silver, gold, well worth in today's dollars over $1 million. And Naaman says, Elijah, because you gave me the secret to this healing, I'm going to make you a millionaire. In verse 16, Elijah turns him down. I can't take your money. I can't take your clothes. It's not about that. And he turns down the money. Gehazi sees him turn down the money. To which Gehazi says, you got to be out of your mind. You didn't heal this man. You offered him well over $1 million, and you're going to turn it down. So when Naaman leaves, Gehazi goes after him. He says to him, my master sent me. And he told me to catch up with you because we got 2 seminary students. He calls them sons of the prophets. We got 2 students who need a scholarship to get through school, who need some clothes because they poor seminary students. And so he sent me to get a little something from you. Let me have a talent and some of the clothes. So before I get any further, let me tell you what's going on now. The Bible calls it the sin of covetousness. Covetousness is desiring and plotting to take something that is not yours to have. Colossians 3:5 calls covetousness idolatry. It is the worship of God, worship of another God, because you don't believe your God is the source, so you go to an illegitimate means to get it. Covetousness. Jesus said in Luke chapter 12 about the covetous man, you don't have to turn there. He said, be aware of every form of greed. It comes in different shapes and different forms. And you know you're a covetous person when you plot to get something you're not authorized to have in an illegitimate way through deception. He says, Elijah sent me. Elijah didn't send him anywhere. Not only that, but there was a fundamental mistake that Gehazi made. He said, Elijah sent me. He uses Elisha's name. He uses God's name. But he leaves out a phrase that Elisha said when he was offered the stuff. Because in chapter 5, verse 16, Elijah said, as the Lord lives, before who I stand. Before who I stand, it means to whom I'm accountable. In other words, Elijah knew he was not just accountable to other folk, he was accountable to God. And God would see what he was doing, even if no man saw it. He lost sight of a divine accountability. The moment you lose sight of God, then you're free to deceive, trick, connive, because you forget God is watching. So he comes and he says, show me the money. I got some seminary students here. Elijah sent me to help. Naaman is glad to oblige. So Naaman goes and hands it to Gehazi, 2 talents, some clothes. Gehazi goes, takes it to his house, and hides it. He then goes to Elijah, and Elijah says, where you been? Gehazi says, I ain't been nowhere. Elijah says, did not my heart go with you when you went to Naaman? And when you connived to get this? How you know this? I figure anybody who can tell somebody to be healed by dipping in the water 7 times must have a divine hookup. Well, you know this. You know how it is when you want something that you're not supposed to have, but you plot to get it. It reminds me of the overweight businessman who came to work with a sack of donuts. He came to work with a sack of donuts, and everybody said, what are you doing with those donuts? You're supposed to be on a diet. You're supposed to be losing weight. Oh, he said, these are spiritual donuts. These are not regular donuts. These are God-ordained donuts. What you mean God-ordained donuts? Well, it says like this. I was on my way to work, and I would pass a donut shop and a sign in the window, special sale on donuts. I said, now God, if you want me, if it's in your will for me to have donuts, then I'm going to drive around the block, and if there's a parking space, I'll know that it's your will for me to have these donuts. He said, after the 7th time going around that block, there was a parking space. So I knew God wanted me to have that donut. See, we can create in our minds a rationale of legitimacy for stuff we want to do that we know is outside of what we ought to do. Some of us have got stuff from work in our house because we rationalized they won't miss it, even though the Bible calls it theft. We can create things and craft things to arrange it so that it feels all right, even though we know it's not. Elijah has scoped him out. And this is what Elijah tells him. Therefore, verse 27, the leprosy of Naaman shall cling to you and to your descendants forever. So he went out of his presence a leper, as white as snow. Let's look at the consequences of his decision. Consequence number 1, a personal curse. Leprosy. Leprosy was where the skin became white, diseased, all kind of breakouts on it, and it was incurable and unreversible. According to Leviticus chapter 13, verses 45 and 46, when you got leprosy, you now had to move outside the camp because it was contagious. So you could give somebody else leprosy. So you now were personally removed from family and friends when it got to a certain level, and now you couldn't work a regular job. It affected you economically, it affected you socially, it affected you relationally, it affected you obviously physically, because you now cursed. And there was no way to fix it. It was irreversible. Perhaps there's somebody here today who feels like you're living under a curse. This thing won't go away. It's affected every area of your life. That one drink has made you an alcoholic. That one hit has turned into something else where a drug owns you. That one thing is now spreading all over you, and there's no cure. You are a leper. No solution. But not only that, he says, you shall be a leper and your descendants. Your descendants, your children. There are some folk under the sound of my voice whose children are picking up your sins. Or you picked up your parents' sins. Your daddy was violent to your mother, so you're violent to your mate. Your daddy and mama cuss like sailors to one another, so you and your mate cuss like sailors to each other. Daddy was an alcoholic, you've become one. And on and on and on and on. Mama lived in debt, we live in debt. It just passes on. And so your children are going to pick it up and they're going to just pass it on. Grandmama and granddaddy got divorced, so mom and daddy got divorced, so we're going to get divorced, so our kids going to get divorced, and it just goes on and on and on. It says, and your descendants. Not only that, he tells them it'll never change forever. This will never, ever end. It's irreversible. Not only that, it's public. He became white as snow. You could see it. It's on his face. Whatever wasn't covered up, you could see he was in a hot mess. All we can do to say about Gehazi right now is, All we can do for Gehazi right now is feel sorry for the boy, because he's in an incurable, irreversible, unfixable, undeniable mess because of his sin. You know what it is to have that thing that plagues your soul. That's the first piece of the puzzle.
We'll hear about the second piece when Dr. Evans continues our message in just a moment. First, though, a quick reminder that today's message is part of Tony's brand new series, U-Turn, Reversing Spiritual Consequences. This 12-lesson collection focuses on parts of your life where you may have taken wrong turns, areas like fear and anxiety, financial challenges, addiction issues, sins that pass down through the generations, and more, including problems that you thought were incurable or irreversible. These powerful lessons can get you headed in a whole new direction, so we're offering them as our gift. All we ask in return is that you make a donation, any donation, no matter the amount, to help us keep Tony's teaching on this station. So call us at 1-800-800-3222 or visit tonyevans.org today to get your copy of U-Turn before time runs out. Again, that's tonyevans.org. I'll have our contact information for you again later on, after Dr. Evans brings us part 2 of today's lesson.
Let's go to the second piece of the puzzle. Let's fast forward to chapter 8, verse 1. Now Elijah spoke to the woman whose son he had restored to life, saying, Arise and go with your household and sojourn wherever you can sojourn, for the Lord has called for a famine, and it will even come on the land for 7 years. So the woman arose and did according to the word of the man of God, and she went with her household and sojourned in the land of the Philistines 7 years. At the end of 7 years, the woman returned from the land of the Philistines, and she went out to appeal to the king for her house and for her field. Now the king was talking with Gehazi, the servant of the man of God, saying, Please relate to me all the great things that Elisha has done. As he was relating to the king how he had restored to life the one who was dead, behold, the woman whose son he had restored to life appeared to the king for her house and for her field. And Gehazi said, My lord, O king, this is the woman and this is her son whom Elijah restored to life. When the king asked the woman, she related to him. So the king appointed for her a certain officer, saying, Restore all that was hers and all the produce of the field from the day that she left the land, even until now. I got a question. What in the world is Gehazi doing in the palace? What is he doing in the palace? This boy is a leper. Not only is he talking to the king, he is a liaison between Elijah and the king, because he now has a job. He's still called the servant of Elijah. So he's standing between Elijah and the king when he's been condemned to be outside due to leprosy. Come on now, I need some more pieces to this puzzle, because chapter 5 and chapter 8 don't make sense. Enter a woman whose son had been raised from the dead. We're told in those first few verses of chapter 8 that this woman, the Shunammite's son, was raised from the dead by Elisha. In the first 3 verses of chapter 8, you see the phrase 7 years, 7 years, 7 years, and 7 is the number of completion. Over a 7-year period, the woman is first, meets Elijah and gets a miracle, the raising of her son. 7 years later, she comes to the king. What happened in the 7 years? Another piece of the puzzle. There's a famine. There is a 7-year famine. While Gehazi is talking to the king says, tell me some of the great things Elijah has done. He says, well, let me tell you one thing. There was this lady with the son, and the son died, and Elijah came in and laid on the son, and the son came back to life. That's one of the things he did. While he's talking to the king about the lady comes in. Oh, coincidence, luck, chance. No such thing as luck. It's called providence. When God arranges his things that you wonder, how did that happen right now? So she shows up while he's talking about her. Okay, wait a minute. I got to put this puzzle together. I got a leper who appears no longer to be a leper. I got a woman. I got a prophet. And I got a famine. How do these pieces hook up? How do these pieces come together? How is he talking to the king like nothing is wrong? How does the woman show up while he's talking about the woman? Why does this 7-year gap show up? Chapter 7. Verse 3, now there were 4 leprous men at the entrance of the gate, and they said to one another, why do we sit here until we die? In other words, we're in a hopeless situation, and we're just sitting here waiting to die. If we say we will enter the city, then the famine is in the city, and we will die there. So we go there, there's nothing to eat there, so we're going to die there. But if we sit here, we're going to die here. So we are dead men regardless. Now, therefore, since we're going to die anyway, why don't we go to the camp of the Arameans? If they spare us and we live, if they kill us, we're going to die. So we're going to die anyway. So let's go over there to that army that's against Israel and let's ask them if they'll give us some food. They may kill us, but we're going to die anyway. So we're in a catch-22 that's unfixable. So they arise at twilight and they go into the camp because the camp has food. This is the enemy of Israel and they're keeping food from Israel. Verse 6. For the Lord had caused the army of the Arameans to hear a sound of chariots and a sound of horses, even the sound of a great army. So they said to one another, behold, the king of Israel has hired against us kings of the Hittites and kings of the Egyptians to come against us. Therefore they arose and fled in the twilight. They said, we stuck. We're going to die here. If we go there, there's no food. The only food is with that enemy army. So we might as well take a chance. Because they might kill us, but let's take a chance. When they took a chance, they discovered God had already gotten rid of the problem. If they would have stayed outside and done nothing, they would have never discovered what God had already done. He had already scared the Aramean army so that they fled. And when they fled, they left all that stuff behind. The lepers come, verse 8, they enter the tent and they ate and drank and carried from their silver and gold and clothes and went and hid them. And they returned and entered another tent and carried from there also and went and hid them. This is called the lottery. Woo! How lucky can you get? Verse 9. Then they said to one another, stay with me here, we are not doing right. This day is a day of good news, but we are keeping silent. If we wait until morning light, punishment will overtake us. Somebody's going to find out about it. Because been there, done that. So instead of that, they change their minds. Rewind. When Gehazi took that which was not his to take, Elijah says to him, just before he sentences him, is it time for you to have silver, gold, clothes, this, that, and the other? He said, it's not wrong that you wanted it. It's wrong that you wanted it in this time. He said, it's not time. Whenever you have to connive to get something God has not given you, it's not because it's necessarily wrong to have it. It's not your time. Over and over again in chapter 8, 7 years, 7 years, 7 years, 7 years, 7 years. The time of completion. Oh, let me give you another word for it. It's called retest. A retest is when God creates the exact same situation or a similar situation to it to see whether you learned your lesson. Called a retest. You know, the one thing I loved in school about retest, that means the teacher was giving me another chance. That gave me hope that my failure on the previous test didn't have to define what happened to me in that grade. It does not change my previous grade, but it gives me hope for a better tomorrow because it's a retest. Notice it's the exact same situation with the exact same stuff. Silver, gold, money, clothes. He says the problem, Gehazi, is it's not time. Meaning another time it will be time. But it's not time now. If you are in an or irreversible situation, you ask God for a retest. Lord, give me another opportunity to take the exam again. And it's going to take you 7 years. Why? Because you got to take it till you complete it.
Dr. Evans will give us more pieces of the puzzle he talked about today when he continues this message next time. Right now, though, if you'd like a full-length copy of today's lesson, we have that available for you on CD or DVD. Search for the title, Reversing Irreversible Consequences, when you visit us at tonyevans.org. Better yet, you can get all 12 full-length messages in our current series called U-Turn, including material we haven't had time to present on the air. And don't forget, right now, this collection is yours on CD as our thank you gift when you help support Tony's ministry with any contribution God leads you to make, large or small. As always, the details are waiting for you online at tonyevans.org, where you can browse through our huge library of resources and sign up for Tony's free weekly email devotional. Again, that's tonyevans.org. We also have staff members standing by around the clock to help you with your resource requests at 1-800-800-3222. Again, that's 1-800-800-3222. Well, as we learned today, even when the consequences of your mistakes seem irreversible, it's still not time to give up hope. But tomorrow, Dr. Evans explains why it may be time to give up something else. Be sure to join us. The Alternative with Dr. Tony Evans is brought to you by the Urban Alternative.